Welcome, everybody. My name is Mandy Daly. I'm the Director of Administration for the Digital Media Learning Competition and for Haystack. I am filling in for our fearless leader, Cheryl Grant, who's unfortunately out sick today, so hoping that she feels better. Also joining me today will be Tim Cook from LRNG and Kylie Larson from LRNG. I believe Kylie's already on. And also Paul Allison and Carissa Cantrell from Sandboxes for Learning, and Carissa, Tassajan, Kate Aubin, and Shannon Lake from My City, My Place. So we're excited to hear about your projects and how they're going. This is a great opportunity for folks to ask LRNG lots of questions and also leverage the wonderful feedback from your peers and the wisdom of the crowd. And of course, we've got our workshop coming up in March in Chicago, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone there. And this is a good opportunity to kind of prepare and get thinking about that. On that front, we will be sending out in the next week some preparatory materials that'll help guide your preparation for that workshop. And we will be asking you to provide some answers to some questions for us and to think through some things specifically for your presentation. So be on the lookout for that. Coming in the next week or so. And finally, we are recording this webinar, so for those people that couldn't make it today, it will be available, and we will share that link out with everyone in a couple of days after the webinar wraps. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and kick it over to Paul and Carissa from Sandboxes for Learning.
Christina.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Mandy. So, in terms of the round robin, how does this usually work? Because I haven't seen one of them. So should we just share our slides and share about our project and then?
Yeah, and we encourage crosstalk and for folks to jump in as necessary to ask questions. So if you guys are open to that, to ask questions as we go along, folks can use the chat window for easy questions, and I would be happy to also unmute folks as needed if the conversation is a little bit more complex and come back and forth. So feel free to use the chat window, and otherwise, yeah, walk us through your slides and people can just jump in as needed if you guys are good with that.
Great. We're in the position where Paul's been leading a lot of the work. I put the slideshow together based on, our conversation. So we're going to try to do the presentation together. So let me.
Let's go quick. We'll leave time for questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
That worked?
Whatever you did was right.
Okay.
Do you know what you did?
Yeah. So there's a control that says presenters view. So I was in presenters view in Google. And then there's presenters view once you present in Zoom. So they both have to be on.
Good to know. All right, so youthvoices.net for a while, but now it's .live for the last year, has been around for now 14 years. And we've been building a community, and that's worth saying because it's a community of teachers some of us have been working all of that time together, trying to provide space for youth to do work and present ideas and issues that are important to them in a site where they can meet each other and collaborate and work together and comment on each other's stuff. Then we started making what we called missions, and there was a kind of a natural, and we were messing around with badges, and so there was kind of a natural move to, okay, what if we kind of moved those missions and the work we're doing around curriculum into LRNG? So that's a very brief introduction to who we are. Many of us are in local writing projects throughout the United States as part of the National Writing Project. And then there's a whole group of Oakland teachers who are involved as well. But is that a quick enough introduction? So, where do you want, you're going to personas here?
Yeah, I'm trying to share the slides. No, I apologize, Paul. I can't really tell what I'm doing.
It's all right. So just let me know when I should stop talking or explain something better. And anybody can interrupt and do that too. So what's been happening is about 25 teachers across the country have been building playlists, XPs and badges and they really started with, we encourage people to start with something that they're passionate about, something that they think is really wonderful that they do with young people, and it connected to connecting on and commenting on and publishing on Youth Voices. So there have been 4 groups working in their own sort of way across the country, those 25 teachers. And as of February 1st, I think there are now 16, and there are probably about 10 to 15 more playlists that are going to come up. In December, we all met, or the leaders of each of those groups met, and one of the things we did was personas.
Great. Okay. Is that viewable?
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going to miss his name right now. Who's the... Cheryl Grant introduced us to...
Lucas Blair.
Lucas Blair. And Lucas, we did some reading around his work around this. And so we developed, I think, 5 personas.
5, yeah.
Yeah. And we started by writing vignettes of actual youth in our classes, and ended up kind of making more fictional characters that would represent the youth that we are working for. It had a kind of profound impact, I think, and it continues to, because as we are designing, we're thinking, oh, what about that student with the interrupted education? How is he going to approach this playlist? What about the girl who's been homeschooled and she's just entering high school for the first time? What's her experience going to be? So as we've been giving each other feedback and thoughts about the work, we've been keeping these youth in mind.
Next is skill trees.
Sure. So we're not. So here's where we are. One of the pages where we are. Lucas also introduces the notion of skills trees. So if you and this comes mainly from role-playing games, I think, where you have and people listening probably know much more about this than I do, but I'll babble about it anyhow. So if you have a character who comes to an experience, then that character gains a certain number of powers. So instead of skills trees, maybe these might be called power trees. But we were searching for a way to organize the playlists, and these are the badges, but they're also, if you click on them, they take you to the playlist. How to organize the playlist so that youth could see that there are different ways to go once they finish one. We weren't totally satisfied with getting lost. That we were looking for some architecture, and so this is what we're playing with now. There are 3 categories. One is sort of be you and be connected, which has to do with just introductory stuff like creating a bio, creating an icon, and so forth, and learning how to respond in the way we respond on Youth Voices. Then there's one for argument and research in areas of interest, and then visual and literary arts. And one of the aspects of the tree, the visual and literary arts, having that together, for example, there's it's not up yet, a playlist ready to come up having to do with memoir. And then there's poetry having to do with stuff about yourself in memoir as well. So we're kind of imagining that you could move out, you could either go in one direction through these trees and just do photography work, or you could move out and move into some of the poetry work. And what you see in front of you is some of the argument and research work, which is kind of central to a lot of the work we do on Youth Voices. Youth do a lot of finding questions that they think are important and then exploring those questions over time and sharing that process all along. So what the playlists end up being are guides for doing that.
And I'll just say that you can click on these and support them yourself at youthvoices.live. That's where this slide comes from.
Right. Yeah, it's youthvoices.live/next, but you can find
Next, yeah.
the link there as well.
Is it okay to move to consultancy, Paul?
Yep. So, do you want to talk? They've heard my voice enough.
Okay, great. So this is Christina, and Paul and I are colleagues at the National Writing Project. And a process that we do as Writing Project colleagues, and other educators do these kind of processes too, and I'm sure you've run into different sort of consultancy processes yourself. But we often use protocols to support us looking at work, either work that we've done or work that students have done, to think about the ways that, or what we can learn from what we're creating and what we're putting together, or what youth are creating and what we're putting together. So in this case, we've been using a peer consultancy protocol and process that has, you know, tons of resources behind it to develop your own if you'd like to. But the idea is to be able to give each other feedback as curriculum designers on what we are developing. So here's a few examples of some of the playlists we've been putting together. And Paul hosts a weekly Teachers Teaching Teachers show where we've been inviting people to come on and talk about the playlists that they've been creating, and we go through this protocol process for other colleagues in this project to look and respond to what they notice about the list. Often these discussions are oriented around, or this one is oriented around describing what you see rather than being in an evaluative mode, but more sort of what do you notice about the other person's work? And then they can ask you questions. So,
yep.
Anything to add, Paul?
Just that the part of the reason we do that is that people see profound stuff themselves just when they hear it through other people's description, right? And then we all learn, because it's usually done with people who are also building and working, and so we all say, oh yeah, I had that problem too, and yeah, that's an interesting solution. So there's that kind of thing happens in the process, that back and forth learning together.
And we can share the process with you too, if you're interested.
Where are we?
And then recently, Paul hosted a discussion with some of the teachers working in Oakland, and Paul invites colleagues from our connected networks to come onto these shows. So another teacher from California joined in this case. And we were discussing some of the feedback that the Oakland, one of the Oakland teachers has been getting from her. She was interviewing her, the youth that she's working with as they were doing playlists. So we're just now starting sort of a testing and feedback process. So some of the questions around that came up the other night were just, you know, okay, what's a good set of questions even to ask? Like what's a good way to do this feedback and play testing? Go ahead, Paul.
Right. No, yeah. I mean, I guess the general design here is that we were hoping to have everything done, you know, by the beginning of February. People are still getting stuff finished, and I think one of your slides coming up is going to explain what I'm about to say. But we are now thinking about where to start using these playlists and how to start using all of the LRNG kind of possibilities in different situations. So good, great, perfect. So, and then there's not enough time for us to go into this, but one of the fascinating things that we're thinking about is how we are working with teachers, and there's a real power in that, because their knowledge of curriculum and how to work with young people and so forth is really important. And then
here are the teachers we're working with, just so people can see that.
Okay. And they're learning what it means to create an experience for young people, not necessarily in their class, but like if I'm in Utah and creating this and it's going to work in my photography club, it also needs to work in New York in that Saturday workshop they're doing, or in the after school program they're doing in Brooklyn. So that kind of thinking has been really interesting to watch and to consider how to make these things valuable and fun and interesting, but also challenging and get to the levels that we want kids to get to. So I don't, a lot of teachers are figuring out how to use the playlists in their classes. And we've recommended, we've kind of counseled and recommended and talked about creating after school spaces so that youth would have more options for moving between playlists and making their own decisions. Yet a lot of teachers we work with give that kind of freedom in their class already. So, so I think some of that can work out. But writing projects, I'll just speak of the New York City writing project, but other writing projects too, I think figuring out how to be in the after school space is an important part of our learning. I'm doing a 10-week, maybe longer than that, after school program at a school in Brooklyn, and then we'll be inviting teachers into that program. So there's a co-learning kind of thing going on. And we also have a consultant working in that school. So there's all sorts of cross between the after school program and the in-school work that we're imagining and testing out and seeing how that works. So that's some of the work. And then whether it's an after school program or a club has come up. Two different examples. One is an actual, physical club, or a couple of examples of that. And then a teacher in Aurora near Denver is doing a club, and I suddenly realized that his club is online. It's kids in his class, but then they spend an hour a week doing the LRNG playlists kind of on their own. And he checks in with them. And so, and just the last to say, up in Michigan, they're doing Saturdays, I think they're like 3 or 4 hours, where they meet with the youth. They have a sort of Saturday camp for the youth in March. So people are finding lots of different places where all of this can work together. The last thing I'll mention, though, is that there is a teacher that I'm working with who did another playlist around poetry, but now she's teaching another, like she's onto something else. And she's thinking that she wants to just make XPs that fit for her class, and then she'll later figure out how they work into a playlist. So trying to break out all the modular pieces of this work is what we're learning.
All right. And one of the things I wanted to note too, to the extent that it's useful, is that where I have the self-paced, I probably need to update this to include Saturday programs, but self-paced, it turns out that in some cases people are in sort of mastery or competency-based programs and therefore have some self-paced opportunities within the school structure itself. Some, their class is designed that way. And some are in sort of credit recovery situations where kids are working to recover past credits of different kinds. So the motivations behind the use of the playlist is also really range and are really different. So it's interesting to watch and learn across all that. Paul, I put a bunch of the personas, but it looks like we don't really have time for any of that. So
yeah, I think we've said enough.
Yeah.
Probably.
So just these personas, we started with a before and after, which is, again, Lucas Blair helped us think about that, like what the persona would be before they use the playlist and potentially after. So do you see the emerging questions, Paul? I kind of cobbled these together from a bunch of things, but.
Do you want to read them? Why don't we end with that, and then we'll hear their questions.
Sure. So yeah, we have, so we're thinking a lot about how we help each other, both as learners. Actually, I should write learners here and teachers, so that we understand learning within less traditional environments. So I think that's something that many of you are probably thinking about too. Paul's really been thinking hard about the power of working with teachers on a tool that might be used without teachers or mentors, and I mean, we're all sort of working through that and the implications of that, so it's interesting. We had really pointed questions about personas, and they, as Paul said, they've really driven the work and have been really important for us to think about. And of course, what are it's a good playlist for all learners, you know, what does that look like? And then how do we engage, challenge, nurture, inspire learners without actually being there? So that's a core question. And how can youth be networked as peers to support each other? So youth voices and using that forum is a bit of an experiment in that, in addressing that. So we're looking at that very carefully too. And then I put together some resources and links to things that might be useful for others. So let me stop. Sorry, I think we went over our time.
You're right on schedule. We've got a few minutes to open it up for questions, and certainly Kylie and Tim, if you have any comments or questions, please jump in as well.
Administration inherited many problems across government and across.
That is not Kylie.
That was crazy.
Donald Trump needs to get off the webinar.
That is hysterical.
I have to apologize. That was some kind of weird thing that started auto-playing in the background of my and it was amazing. It really was terrifying.
Yeah, right, Mandy. As soon as we're done here, that's all you play all day, right?
Yeah, I just plug it and listen to Trump all day long. I don't even know. It's terrifying. So sorry about that. But anyway, please do jump in.
I'll throw in a quick question. If you think back to the slide where you had the multiple contexts where young people might engage with the playlist, how are you thinking about, since you're working with teachers right now who I guess are in that space with young people and know how to scaffold all that, how are you working, like the degree of scaffolding into the playlist based on where they might be engaged with? That's an issue that I'm trying to work with right now and figuring out how much to put in, how much not to put in, things of that sort.
Yeah, you know, people have come up with their own decisions about it and all that, right? So that's one of the things. So we'll find out what works and what doesn't work. A lot of us in the network are familiar with hypothesis. So let me just pop that in there now.
Oh yeah, too. I forgot about this.
And so you know, even though they're published, one of the things we've been telling each other is that when you have a really great idea and you can't change it right now, you know, highlight and make a hypothesis note to that effect, and then we can all see that on the LRNG platform if we have hypothesis on. So that's one way that we've kind of imagined scaffolding some of it.
I think we also, yeah, I mean, it's, so some of the way that the skill trees are also set up is sort of enters people into a playlist by playlist design rather than XP by XP design. And so we're also interested in looking at what happens when people enter that way versus a sort of XP by XP get lost kind of design. And we want to, I'm not sure if we've really formalized how we're going to look at that actually though, but that is another question that we have, is what happens between those two. And then given how much scaffolding there is or isn't, because each person has designed them differently, what would the implications be there also? So, but we definitely have a lot of interest in sort of thinking about badges that would unlock other, like the relationships between playlists too. And that's part of what the skill tree is trying to get to, is that there's, you know, you could start here, we would make some suggestions about starting here and then moving down here, you know, later. So we're playing with it in different ways, but I think it's a good question and a very live question for us. What have you been discovering, Evan?
I'm having to move myself from pulling things out. I'm tending to put too much in and trying to pull out. So right now we're in the process of having multiple versions of XPs, some that have a lot in there and some that are kind of broken that into like 3 different XPs, and we're going to pilot them. We're working out the paperwork right now to put those into some local schools to see how they're working in terms of like what's the threshold of no longer interested, no longer able to get through because there's too much there, and then also figuring out how that works with the interface that's available. So I don't have a solution yet. That's why I'm wondering.
Yeah. I mean, we're actively sort of looking at that too. I feel like we need a little bit of a matrix to look at what are the different pieces too that influence it.
It's great to hear all these like pedagogical, like design kinds of things that people are thinking of, because, our project is slightly different in that we know that the playlist will be, it's almost more curricular in a sense, and we know that they'll be being used in a sort of a blended interface where there will be a lot of face-to-face time with the informal educators. But still, I continue to think about, like, I go back to sort of the definition of connected learning and kind of try to play where we are in that bigger picture. And I kind of try to tell myself that it's great that we're in this group with a lot of different people trying to play with it from different angles to sort of broaden the tent maybe of what connected learning is. Because I think, my code work is one thing, but then also in our Ready to Learn project that I'm also working on right now, seeing the strengths of playlists for things for kids with, for UDL, Universal Design for Learning, for youth with disabilities, because of offering really choice. And so some of the things that you guys are talking about with personas actually that different kids, might come about at it differently, are educationally really a strong thing that we all can be designing to, is that a lot of different learners, can benefit from this work in their own ways. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. And the UDL is really important to keep in mind too. I mean, I think that's a really helpful, we should go back to that.
Well, this was great. I think we might need to shift gears and toss it over to the folks from Providence Library. But thank you all so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So with that, I'm going to toss it over to the My City, My Place folks, Carissa and Shannon, I believe.
Yes, this is Carissa, and so glad to be on the call today. I'm actually going to pass it to Shannon, who will be doing most of the talking, but we also have on our team Kate Albin and Sherry Lahane, who will be adding in. We are definitely new to the LRNG platform and playlist, and but we are approaching this as a public library that will be that is creating the playlist and actually implementing it. So we would so much appreciate your input on our questions as we go. So Shannon, do you want to go ahead and do a screen share? I think that was the way we were going to start. And we unmute yourself too.
Hi, everybody. So as Carissa mentioned, we are pretty new to the realm of playlists, but we're not new to working with youth in out-of-school time learning, and our team is a mixture of formal educators, adult educators, and teen educators. So right now on the screen is our past projects that we have that were our teen tech squad started out with youth being able to explore the city with iPads. And as pictured here, our Rhode Island collection librarian was able to give the students access to our map collection from years past, and also images of some of the buildings and streetscapes of our city from years ago, where there was trolleys instead of buses and maybe horse and carriage on the same streetscape that they're walking through today. So that was our initial idea for our first playlist, which is partially one of our questions as well, is that our playlists feel like they kind of go together. So we would want the students to go through playlist 1 and then 2 and then 3, because as you go through the project, you would need some of the evidence and your assets from playlist 1 in order to complete playlist 2. So the videos that we are asking students to create in playlist 1 are of a location that they choose within the state of Rhode Island. It doesn't have to be Providence, but those are the youth that we particularly work with. And some of these are examples of a program that we did in the past of our 2 theaters and music venues that are in our city. And with that, we move into, we place everything in the LRNG platform to be able to share our thoughts of what a playlist, how this works. We're still kind of, these are part of our questions because we're so new to it. So the example is the next step after you've created your video is to be able to get feedback and constructive criticism from a tourism or hospitality professional. Our focus is to be able to attract someone to your city as an outsider. Why would they come to where you are from? So the students, again, are using the video that they chose of a community asset of their choice. And with playlist 2, they're able to share that with a tourism and hospitality professional. And as that career is, the state of Rhode Island was part of a Brookings Institute study that said that hospitality and tourism is an up and coming career that has lots of opportunity. So part of this playlist, the first is to research that industry as a career choice. So that's where we designed our first XP. And we thought our timing, we're not sure exactly how to time our playlists either. So we're guessing that playlists, this first XP would take about 30 minutes for a student to get through, where right now we're working on the model of the students being with us at the library for the user testing, but some of the results of having a hospitality or tourism professional with us that week will turn into videos that a student who wasn't able to be here that week could then access. So the videos that we're referring to in this are from the experts that will be here during the week-long user testing. And we have some questions as well about what types of submissions a student can have for us to approve and for us to look at, and is video supported within the LRNG format. So if we're asking students to make and upload a vlog to answer the questions that are referenced in the video or what they've learned from that video, is that a possibility?
Yeah, I can answer real quick. You'll actually be able to see the different options if you either log out as an organization or if you log in as a learner and view one of your XP pages. You'll be able to see I think it's 5 options. You can submit text, video, images, PDF and Word document uploads, as well as some other options.
So in order for us to see these options, we need to publish our playlists?
No, you just have to be, they don't show up when you're logged in as an organization, since organizations cannot submit those posts. So you have to be logged in as a youth or just logged out. So if you actually logged out on this page, I think you should be able to see it on this page, right?
Okay. I'll do that after the call, but thank you. That's much appreciated. So then our next part of the playlist that we're designing is that the youth would receive, after they've shared their information and learned about the career, or they've learned about, hospitality and tourism careers, then they would share their video with a tourism professional to be able to get feedback from that professional as to how their video would attract or draw someone into their community for a tourism purpose. And again, we're asking them to upload vlogs and to responding to the questions about after receiving the feedback from the individual, what was useful. And then the next step in the process would be to implement the feedback. And now that you've received feedback from a professional, how are you going to modify or take what they said to adjust what you've created. And so this time it is to upload their edited video so that we can see from the beginning where the students were and then how they changed it after they received the feedback. And then we connected this one to a badge. We're kind of just playing around with everything as well. Which I know they can't submit because I'm in the back end, but the badge that we connected it to is receiving and implementing feedback, which we have not yet found a picture for that, but that's kind of the least of our worries right now. Oh.
It's done.
Well, it was there earlier today. Interesting. Okay, so, well, I won't show you the badge since it's not there at the moment, but some of our, oh, it logged me out. There we go. So with this badge for receiving and implementing feedback, these are the criteria that a student would be able to say that they were that they were competent in at that point. But what we were curious about is some of the unlocked opportunities, and if the next playlist becomes an item to be unlocked from earning this badge, how that works.
So we have a couple of workarounds because right now we don't actually offer stacked badges. One thing you can do is in the next playlist, your first XP can be, hey, before you can start this playlist, you need to upload proof that you completed the playlist that we think you need to have done before you jump into this one, and ask them to upload their badge as evidence of completion of the previous playlist.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And this is pretty much the conclusion of what we had to show right now, but we do have lots of questions, and we're up for questions that you all may have or suggestions as we go through creating the other playlists and even this one.
Yeah, great. If you wanna jump in with your questions for the folks from LRNG, that's fine, and folks can chime in as they can, as their thoughts come to them in the chat window, or just unmute.
Okay. One of our questions is that how to determine if an XP will be a local XP or a digital XP when the content has digital components, no matter which one you select.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second for me.
Sorry. One of our questions is how do you determine if an XP will be a local XP or a digital XP when they both have digital components? Like no matter which one you pick, you have a lot of digital components to your XP.
Could you give me an example? Because I'm wondering if it's the case where they should be split up into two separate things, or if what the digital component of a local XP would be. That might help me talk it through with you.
Okay. So an example for ours with the video creation, we have the option of a student being here with us, learning from us how to do it, or we have resources that are digital that we could send them to videos to figure out how to create and use the iPads. So I don't know if that's two different ones or yes?
For me, I would probably separate that out, depending on if you had like a standing workshop that you wanted to recruit youth to come to. For me, I would make that a standalone XP, and then maybe you have like a supplemental digital only playlist that you could use in that in-person workshop if you wanted, or you could point youth to once they've been in the workshop if they wanted to do some more work on their own at home.
Okay.
In terms of the XP builders on the application, The local XP builder, the main difference to it is just it allows you to have a time and a place. So that might be a way to make the decision as well.
Okay. So part of it we were playing around with because our user testing is a definite time and place. So maybe building that way local, and then doing once we have all of our digital content, building another one that mirrors it in the digital format. Maybe that kind of fits into what you're saying. Also, the unlocked opportunities are still kind of a question mark for us in terms of, I think it kind of speaks to the sequential question a little bit that I was asking earlier, but if playlist B is an unlocked opportunity for playlist A, how does playlist B remain locked until a user completes the playlist A?
So Tim, I'll also have you chime in on this. Currently, we don't offer that functionality, so there's no way to lock a playlist. In our original thinking, we wanted these to be able to jump into learning experiences at whatever point they felt comfortable. And so sequence has become increasingly important to a lot of our users, but wasn't part of the initial conception. So while you can strongly suggest that your learners do one playlist before another, at the current moment, there's no way to actually lock one playlist until they've completed the former.
Okay.
Yeah, and what you said is exactly right in terms of that being a second option for linking two playlists together. So publishing the second one in the opportunity field is something a lot of people have done. And yeah, like Kylie said, you can suggest a prerequisite structure, but you can't require one.
Okay.
And Shannon, that's what we were talking about too, in terms of like, we're trying to see what happens if we're sort of have a more sort of suggested path, or if kids go in at different points, what happens. So you could also leave it open to some aspect of testing and see in your play testing how that unfolds. So don't have to, but just a thought.
Thank you. And I think for ours, what's a little bit different is if you don't have a video at all, you can't do playlist 2 or 3.
Right.
So yeah, so I guess maybe that's our answer too.
Right. I mean, you could just say, to do the video, start here first. Right. Most people will probably be motivated enough to do that because there's nowhere else to go.
And then another big question that was coming from our group is surrounded around feedback. And if a youth submission is rejected, how are we able to respond and give them feedback as to why and tweaks as for resubmission?
Christina, do you want to tackle that one as someone who's worked with the assessment a lot?
Sure. Shannon, yeah, we've, at the National Rain Project, we've been doing some assessment of the national badges. And so we're just about to go into this process with our Sandboxes project too. The way that you do it is that once a badge is submitted, there's that approval dashboard. And I don't know if we have time, but the Provo Dashboard lets you see what's been submitted. You can click on the individual submissions and you'll see all the XPs that youth has done with the related work. And then you can, then you can mark if something fits a certain set of criteria that you would have thought through ahead of time, like what you expect to see for each XP. And then there's a way to give a comment related to whether or not all the criteria has been met for that badge. You can leave, if it has not, you can leave a comment and you can sort of mark which ones the youth which XPs the youth should return to.
Okay.
But if you feel like the criteria has been met, then you can approve the badge right there. And then the youth gets that feedback. I believe, do they get an email, Tim and Kylie? I was wondering about if it's an email or, yeah, it's an email. Okay. so the youth gets that back. One of the things that we've been doing as a community of teachers on assessment is both thinking with, thinking together about what the criteria is so that all the assessors are clear on the criteria for that badge, if multiple assessors are working on that badge. And then also think about our sort of response to the youth in terms of how can we be supportive, give supportive response so that the youth can be successful. So we've also been talking about that together and thinking about that before we respond. And once we sort of have a way of doing that in place, then we can respond more rapidly to more youth. It also helps us see where our play list might be confusing, as another thing we've noticed. That when we go to assess the work, we can see if youth are maybe repeating the same thing all the time, or we're not quite getting what we thought we would get from the youth, and maybe the problem is with our playlists and not with the some aspect of the playlist. So it also helps us with that process.
Thank you, Christina. That was really great information. And so also another question is, would you all recommend that we just publish a playlist and play around with it as a learner so that we can see these options? And because that was something that we were like, we don't know from the back end how we will receive these submissions.
I will also share out our assessment handbook. It's not quite all the way finished, but I think it's in good enough shape that you can see it. It'll show you what the youth gets and then what you all will receive as the assessor.
That would be helpful.
Yep, I'll send that out right now.
Edge asked in the chat box about how to ensure if the students authored the video. And yeah, Kylie, you're correct, as in it's kind of an honor system. However, if they are a local youth, there's only so much footage out there of this area. And so it will be pretty obvious if you're taking a video that's, it's the production value right now is not was not what was being judged in terms of the video. So the location makes a big difference in knowing or perceiving that it was that youth that produced the video.
By the way, I want to throw in that when youth are asked to submit something, they often have the same question you had, where, the way they ask it is, who am I submitting this to? And I think behind that question is like, and how am I going to be evaluated, and who's doing that evaluation? Like, what's going on here? Because they're used to submitting work to a teacher or to somebody they know. And then, so when they're submitting I think we need to try to be clear what that assessment process is going to be like for them too, and who's going to be doing it. If you guys can say, we're going to be assessing your badges, that would be a good thing to tell kids.
Can I ask a follow-up question before you continue, Shannon? On the idea of giving feedback once they've submitted approval of a badge, so it feels like it's summative for me. And have you had any experiences with giving feedback to the individual XPs along the way, so it feels a little bit formative and they're not kind of waiting until they get to the end to find out they need to go back and give something? Because I was also thinking of it as a means of motivation, and persistence, just having that communication along the way so they get positive feedback. Have you guys been doing any of that, or has anybody? Or is it?
I think right now let's clarify, Kylie and Tim, I think it's all summative at this point. Like, they have to get through the playlist, but you can give, you give feedback on the XPs, but it's still at the end, at a submission point. I don't think you can do commenting along the way. You can actually see how far, in the back end, you can see how far a youth is in the playlist. You can see how many XPs they've done within a set of XPs, but you can't actually give any feedback on the technical side until a submission has been done, and that means that all the XPs have been gone through and a thing has been submitted for a badge.
Mm-hmm. And for clarification, Christina and Paul, you said that the feedback can be given within the LRNG platform, correct? Once the badge is submitted for approval.
Yes, there's
Yep.
space for giving that kind of feedback.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And so that's why we've been both trying to get clear on our criteria, but also get clear on the ways we want to give feedback, or we feel like it's useful to give like we've been sort of working together to think that through. So it's not just our individual impulse, but that we're sort of trying to do the mentoring within that process.
Yeah, and I think that the way that we have our first My City, My Place, our first playlist designed, because it's in person in the library program, we have the opportunity to give them feedback as we go along. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be one of the advantages of some of the from the local XPs. Thank you.
Right, and actually we've linked it to this Youth Voices forum, so some of them will be getting feedback in that space before they submit for a badge. So that's another design thing that we're playing with.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Another question that we had on our list of questions was, are students or youth doing the playlist independently of an organization? And how has that success been thus far? Or not?
So it's a good question. You know, the original conception, I think, was really that it would be more of a direct to youth, and that youth could access these learning opportunities and learning experiences anywhere, anytime, to really do truly interest-driven, self-directed learning. While we've been in beta, because of the way that we've rolled out the platform, I think our primary successes have come from, you know, educator-driven in-org, in-school learning experiences that leverage the platform to allow teens to continue their learning outside of that, you know, physical space. But it really has been an organization-driven experience up to this point, unless anybody has other experiences that I'm unaware of at this point.
The only other one idea that as you guys have been presenting is that there is a teacher at the learning community in Central Falls near Rhode Island who's on Youth Voices, and it would be great if she saw your badges and your playlists, and so there might be some cross-institutional stuff that we could play with, right? That would be fun to do.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. If you can we'll connect with each other and get the teacher's name and all of that. Good.
Yep.
And on that note, does the platform allow for people to sign up independently of an organization? Like, can users go on themselves and enter themselves as a user?
Yeah, anyone can sign up, and when they sign up, they can associate themselves with a network, so a city or a large organization, or just be sort of free floating.
Yeah, so if you aren't within a city of LRNG and your organization doesn't have a large multi-state national account, they automatically become affiliated with the national network feed, which I know has been a little bit confusing for some of our organizations and for some of our learners, because they go on hoping to find, for example, your content, and instead are directed to the national feed. So I'm currently working on some solutions to that particular issue, so that it'll be easier for youth to find the content that they want from the organizations that they're joining through.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, we were thinking that, you know, since we joined them Youth Voices, I mean, some of them would like to see the national playlist too, so that's a great benefit, but we were thinking maybe the other way around.
Yeah, join through Youth Voices and then have the national content in that feed too, but the landing page that they'd want to find first would be through Youth Voices, because they're coming through that organization.
Yeah.
Instead of going to the national feed and then having to like enter the specific hidden URL to find Youth Voices.
Yeah, like find our hidden spot.
So I promise I'm working on it. Cool. It's actually, I'm writing up user stories right now, so I can figure out the easiest and quickest possible solution.
Great, thank you.
Well, everyone, I think we're coming to the end of our hour. We have time for one more question if anyone has them.
So I just wanted to get back to Evan, who mentioned very fast that you were going to do some of the playlists in a local school or something. And just to say that I'm totally interested in how that back and forth between out of school and in school stuff works. But I don't know if that was a question, but I wanted to make sure we remembered that you mentioned that.
Yeah, we're working with local teachers, a community music school, and then some orgs who are in other states who are more loose, and trying to figure out how do these things differ across these multiple contexts, depending on who the people are that may or may not be adults and what their background is. So it's hypothetical right now because we haven't actually rolled that out, but that's coming very soon.
And I'm getting some questions about the last week's round robin webinar, and I'll be posting that link in the chat, and I'll also follow up with an email to everyone to link you to last week's webinar, and we'll shoot out a link to this one as soon as Demos has an opportunity to process it. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It was a great conversation, and we're looking forward to seeing you in March in Chicago. And like I said, be on the lookout for an email from Cheryl and myself that'll help you prep for that event coming up. And good luck to you guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.